Jay Z is setting Diddy up.
Jay's definitely.
Jay helped you?
Yeah.
How did he
As a
help you?
competitor.
Explain it.
Yeah, because he never was someone that you communicate with that you're like friends with the person. But I always respected him because he was never an actual competitor in actual fact. He was someone who was a competitor through perception.
How close was Diddy and Jay Z? They was close enough that they wasn't playing basketball, they wasn't playing baseball, they wasn't playing football, and they wasn't playing hockey or soccer for Diddy to come on stage, pat him on his and then make the statement to people in the world that can't nobody call me Sean but Jay Z.
And B was, one time she jumped off of the ledge. She ain't running over because she thought me and Jay had issues, and I was like, what the? And I was like, did she really just jump down and run over here like that?
Beyonce jumped off a ledge. Yeah, what happened?
It was in the Cosmopolitan, huh?
She really a superhero.
She jumped down and no, she was like, this what? Like that Bonnie and Clyde for real? You try this or what, boy? I'm here.
Word.
She down like at me. She like, I said,
Was Solange with her? She...
When 50 Cent drops a bomb, it's never wrapped in warnings. It's wrapped in jokes, sarcasm, and a grin that tells you he knows exactly what he's doing. And this time, the blast radius didn't just hit one name. It hit the untouchables. Diddy, Jay Z, two pillars the industry treats like sacred ground. One post was all it took. No press run, no interviews. Just a few words that landed like a pin pulled from a grenade. Fans didn't laugh, they froze. Because this didn't feel like trolling for attention. This felt like someone tapping a glass wall and proving it wasn't bulletproof. Timelines lit up instantly. Old interviews resurfaced. Half-forgotten jokes suddenly sounded intentional. And when people started watching Jay Z's reaction, or a lack of one, the narrative took a hard left. Because when a man known for silence suddenly looks uncomfortable, the internet assumes something went wrong behind the scenes. This wasn't a diss. This wasn't entertainment beef. This felt like a pressure test. And when the industry didn't laugh it off, fans knew something shifted. Because when 50 Cent jokes and billionaires allegedly stopped moving the same, the internet smells blood. And once you see how this unfolded, you'll understand why people say this moment cracked the industry's unwritten rules wide open. The moment 50 Cent hit post, the industry didn't laugh it off. It stiffened. Because when 50 jokes, it's rarely random, and when he keeps circling the same names, it stops sounding like comedy and starts feeling like a warning wrapped in sarcasm. This wasn't a diss track era move. This was social media chess, played by someone who knows exactly which squares you're not supposed to touch. It didn't arrive with receipts or a press tour. It arrived casually, almost lazily, the way a bomb gets dropped when someone wants to pretend they weren't aiming. A few words, a familiar laugh. Names that aren't supposed to be said together unless you're praising legacies. Diddy, Jay Z, two figures. The culture treats like monuments. And suddenly the timeline felt tense in a way memes couldn't soften. Context matters here. Because 50 has been talking about how the industry really works for years. He's joked about gatekeepers, power brokers, and invisible rules that allegedly decide careers behind closed doors.
He never says this is true. He says, ain't it funny how...
And lets the audience finish the sentence. That strategy is old, effective, and legally clean. But repeated long enough, implication becomes narrative. Fans went straight to the archives. Old interviews popped up where 50 smirked through questions about industry politics. Clips where he hinted that certain people run things resurfaced. Like lost footage suddenly found. None of it proved anything. But proof wasn't the point. Pattern was. And online. Patterns feel convincing even when they're built on coincidence. The conversation pivoted fast to Jay Z, not because he responded, but because he didn't. Silence from powerful people always gets interpreted as movement. Fans swear they saw a shift, a change in energy, a pause that felt louder than words. Jay Z's brand has always been control through quiet. But when quiet meets viral speculation, it stops looking calm and starts looking calculated. Fair or unfair, that's how the internet reads it. People began analyzing everything like amateur strategists. Every lack of denial was framed as discomfort. Every absence from the conversation was treated like confirmation that something landed. Too close to home. That's the danger of perception culture. Once the audience decides something reacted badly, the story moves forward whether the subject participates or not. Diddy's name carried a different gravity. Not because of anything newly alleged, but because the internet already treats him like an unsolved puzzle. Years of exaggerated rumors, recycled anecdotes, and half-remembered stories have turned him into a character larger than reality. So when 50 pokes that myth again, it doesn't feel like trolling for attention. It feels like reopening a file. People never stopped speculating about. The brilliance of 50's approach is how little he has to say he doesn't accuse. He doesn't clarify. He lets fans argue with each other while he watches. That restraint makes people assume he knows more than he's sharing, even if he doesn't. An assumption is the fuel of viral scandals. Comment sections split instantly. One side laughed it off, calling it classic 50 behavior. They said this was just another round of internet chess meant to stir engagement. The other side wasn't convinced. They pointed out that 50 rarely keeps the same targets in his sights without reason, especially not figures as insulated as Jay Z and Diddy. That's where tension thickened. Because there's an unspoken rule in hip-hop about who gets joked about, safely and who doesn't. Legends are usually handled with reverence, not ridicule. 50 ignores that rule entirely. He treats untouchables like fair game, and the audience loves him for it. The first wave of reactions wasn't outrage. It was curiosity, dangerous curiosity. Fans started asking why this joke felt different. Why it landed heavier than past trolling. Why the usual dismissals didn't come fast enough to kill the story. Old timelines were stitched together with confidence. Careers, partnerships, moments of silence, and sudden shifts were lined up like puzzle pieces. The logic wasn't airtight, but it felt cohesive enough to spread. And online, spread matters more than accuracy. J-Z single quotes S name trended without a single statement from him. That alone fed the narrative. The man known for strategic silence suddenly had that silence interpreted as panic, discomfort, or damage. Control, none of it confirmed, all of it repeated. And repetition creates belief. Diddy's presence in the conversation pulled in unrelated speculation like gravity. Stories that had nothing to do with the original post were dragged back into circulation, amplified by captions suggesting everything was connected. This is how internet folklore grows. Not from facts, but from familiarity. 50 didn't step in to stop it.
He didn't explain himself, he didn't correct anyone. He let the moment breathe.
And that's what made people uneasy. Because when someone who loves attention chooses restraint, it feels intentional. Industry insiders didn't rush to defend anyone publicly. No loud denials, no firm shutdowns, just quiet. And silence from insiders always gets read as something more than self-preservation. Even when that's all it is. Nobody wants to be the person who speaks too early and gets dragged into a storm still forming. The narrative shifted from, "This is trolling," to "Why does this feel like a pressure test?" People said it felt like someone tapping the glass to see if it would crack. Like a reminder that legends aren't immune to speculation once the internet decides to look closer. Pop culture. Comparisons started rolling in. Fans likened the moment to old Hollywood whispers, unspoken rules, and power structures nobody challenges publicly. Others said this felt like a billionaire poker table getting flipped by the one guy who doesn't care about the buy-in. Dramatic? Absolutely. Effective? Completely. By the end of the first wave, it was clear this wasn't a one-off moment. The reaction proved there was fuel everywhere. Not proof, not facts. But tension. And tension is all a story needs to keep moving. Because when jokes make powerful people look uncomfortable, the internet assumes the joke wasn't really a joke at all. And when 50 Cent laughs while the industry goes quiet, people believe he knows exactly which nerve he touched. Whatever came next wasn't going to calm things down. It was going to decide who controls the narrative. Once that first wave hit, the internet didn't cool down. It spiraled. What started as a single post turned into a full-blown Industry guessing game where everyone suddenly believed they were reading between lines that were never written. The conversation stopped being about what 50 Cent said and became about what he didn't say, which is always more dangerous. Timelines transformed into digital evidence boards. Old interviews resurfaced with dramatic captions claiming they hit. Different now. Clips from years ago were slowed down, zoomed in, and dissected like hidden confessions. Nothing new was revealed, but everything old felt suspicious. Context collapsed under the weight of speculation. Memes flooded the feeds immediately, but they weren't playful. They were sharp, uncomfortable, and layered with inside jokes that implied everyone already knew something the public wasn't supposed to hear. People compared the situation to someone pulling back a curtain just far enough to prove there was something behind it. Humor became the delivery system for unease. Celebrity reactions didn't arrive as statements. They arrived as silence, likes, unfollows, and carefully vague captions. A heart emoji under the wrong post sent comment sections into overdrive. Fans tracked interactions like it was election night, convinced alliances were forming in lines. We're being drawn. J-Z single quotes. S alleged reaction took on a life of its own. The internet decided he reacted badly, not because of anything he said, but because of how still everything felt. People framed the quiet as tension, the absence as panic, the lack of response as damage control. Whether fair or not didn't matter. Perception had already won the race. Diddy's name pulled in even more baggage. Internet folklore rushed back to the surface like it had been waiting for an excuse. Old rumors, exaggerated stories, and recycled anecdotes were treated like chapters in a book fans swore they'd read before. None of it confirmed. All of it familiar. And familiarity breeds belief. Commentary channels jumped in fast thumbnails. Glowing red with words like bombshell, industry shook, and this is big. Big. Accuracy wasn't the goal. Speed was. Every video added another layer of intensity, repeating speculation until it sounded authoritative. That's how narratives solidify online. Public opinion didn't flip instantly. It tilted, then slid downhill. At first, people laughed it off as classic 50 trolling. Then they noticed how often he revisits the same names. How fearless he seems poking figures most people treat like sacred ground. That's when laughter turned into suspicion. Industry insiders stayed quiet, which only fueled the fire. No loud defenses. No strong denials. Silence from people who usually speak was treated like confirmation, even though silence often just means don't touch this. In entertainment, speaking too early can end careers faster than speaking at all. Fans began framing this moment as a crack in the wall. Not a full collapse, but a visible fracture in the industry's polished image. People said it felt like someone knocking just hard enough to prove the door wasn't as solid as everyone pretended. Pop culture comparisons went wild. Some likened it to old Hollywood secrets nobody dared to say out loud. Others compared it to a billionaire poker game disrupted by the one guy who doesn't care about losing chips. Dramatic? Absolutely. Effective? Completely. Even neutral observers felt the shift. The tone had changed. This wasn't playful beef anymore. It was uneasy curiosity. The kind that makes people question legacies they grew up respecting. And once respect cracks, it never looks the same again. The conversation spilled beyond hip-hop into broader discussions about power, silence, and who really controls narratives in entertainment. People question why some figures are protected while others get dragged instantly. Those questions didn't need answers to cause damage. Asking them was enough. 50 Cent stayed quiet through the chaos, which felt intentional. He didn't clarify. He didn't deny. He let the internet run wild. And that silence from him was strategic, because when the audience fills in the blanks, you don't have to say anything at all. By now, the story no longer belonged to 50, Jay Z, or Diddy. It belonged to the internet. And once the internet claims ownership, facts become optional and emotion becomes law. The most unsettling part wasn't the rumors themselves. It was how confident people sounded repeating them, not cautiously, not conditionally, confidently. As if speculation had already crossed the line into truth. That's when reputations start taking real damage. Not from proof, but from perception. By the end of this phase, one thing was undeniable. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a narrative shift. By the time the noise stopped screaming and settled into a low, persistent hum, the damage had already taken root. Not the kind that explodes and burns out in a week, but the kind that rewires perception. This moment didn't prove anything. It didn't need to. It planted doubt. And in an industry built on mystique, legacy, and controlled narratives, doubt is more corrosive than any accusation. The conversation stopped being about what 50 Cent said and became about what people believed he knew. That distinction changed everything. Fans weren't demanding receipts anymore. They were re-evaluating myths. And once people start re-evaluating legends instead of celebrating them, the pedestal starts to wobble. Jay Z's continued silence became its own storyline. Not because silence equals guilt, but because silence invites imagination. Every quiet move was read as strategy. Every non-reaction was framed as containment. The billionaire known for mastering the art of saying nothing suddenly found that nothing saying everything for him. In internet culture, restraint doesn't look calm. It looks suspicious. Diddy's name carried a different type of weight through the fallout. Not new allegations, not fresh claims, just the gravity of long-standing internet folklore that refuses to die. Old stories resurfaced yet again, exaggerated through retelling, detached from context, and amplified by the idea that this all connects somehow. Familiarity did the work. Facts never had to. Industry relationships felt tense even from the outside. Fans noticed subtle shifts. People who once spoke freely chose their words carefully. Appearances felt measured. Collaborations were discussed with caution. Nobody wanted to step into the blast radius of a narrative still mutating in real time. In entertainment, unresolved controversy is a liability. What made this fallout more dangerous than most was the lack of closure. No explosive denial, no dramatic clapback, no definitive statement to reset the story. Just unanswered questions floating in public space. And unanswered questions online don't fade. They multiply. They get interpreted. They get weaponized. 50 Cent stayed exactly where he wanted to be, adjacent, amused, untouched. He didn't escalate. He didn't clarify. He watched. And that restraint only reinforced the belief that he had nothing to prove and nothing to lose. Whether true or not didn't matter. The perception locked in. Fans began revisiting old moments with new eyes. Past interviews sounded heavier. Old jokes felt loaded. Previous silences seemed intentional. That's how narratives evolve, not by adding new information, but by changing how existing information is understood. The ripple effects extended beyond individuals. Conversations about power, silence, and gatekeeping dominated timelines. People questioned why some figures are protected by reverence while others are devoured by speculation. They questioned who controls narratives and who benefits from quiet. Those questions didn't require answers to cause discomfort. Asking them was enough. Reputations didn't collapse. They shifted. And shifts are permanent. Once legends are seen as players in a murkier game, innocence stops being assumed. Every move becomes strategic. Every silence becomes calculated. This wasn't cancellation. It was corrosion. The slow wearing down of certainty. And corrosion doesn't trend loudly. It lingers. What made this moment feel historic to fans wasn't the content of the so-called bombshell. It was the reaction to it. The industry didn't laugh it off. It didn't crush it publicly. It absorbed it quietly. And quiet absorption looks like fear to an audience trained to expect noise. The myth of total control cracked. Just enough for people to notice. Just enough to remind everyone that no narrative is bulletproof once the internet decides to stare long enough. This wasn't the end of the story. It was the midpoint where power dynamics become visible. Where jokes stop sounding harmless and start sounding like pressure tests. What happens next will matter more than anything that's already happened. The next post, the next silence, the next refusal to engage. Every move will be read as intentional. All right. Now, before you click away pretending this was just another internet joke, let's get honest. Moments like this don't vanish when the timeline refreshes. They linger. They sit in the background of the culture. quietly changing how people look at power, silence, and who really controls the narrative. This wasn't about proof. This was about pressure. And pressure always reveals. Cracks sooner or later. Now I want to hear from you. Was 50 Cent just doing what he does best, trolling the industry for sport? Or did he tap a nerve that wasn't supposed to be touched? Did Jay Z's silence say more than any denial ever could? Or is the internet once again turning imagination into facts? Drop your take in the comments. Because this conversation is far from over, and the comment section is where the real debates break out. And don't tap that like button politely. Smash it like it owes you money, like it borrowed your charger and never returned it, like it just said trust me with no explanation. That one click tells the algorithm this story still has heat. If you're not subscribed yet, fix that immediately. Scandals don't come with warnings. They drop suddenly, grow legs, and start running before anyone can control them. And when they do, this channel is where the noise gets decoded. The power plays get questioned, and the myths get stress-tested. Because today it's a joke wrapped in sarcasm. Tomorrow it's reactions behind closed doors. Next week it's industry shifts nobody saw coming. This cycle never stops, and neither do we. Stay sharp, stay skeptical. And remember, when powerful people stay quiet, it's usually not because there's nothing to say.